But one day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The newest show sensation streaming throughout the multiverse. Your hang place in cyberspace for paranormal news and views. Taboo Topics with Jean Broida.
Welcome everyone to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. I'm your host, Jean Broida, beaming to you from sea to shining sea across the Americas and the world every Sunday night between 7 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States on my Taboo Topics YouTube channel, tabootopics.life/shows, and multicast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. Panelists on Taboo Topics with Jean Broida read news articles about paranormal events, conspiracies, and other hush-hush subjects that we all probe further before moving on to the next taboo topic. On today's show, and today is, by the way, April 12th, 2020, please welcome esteemed guest panelists, BoJenn Jennings, registered nurse and paranormal experiencer, and Richard Smith, ufologist, author, and on-air personality. BoJenn, please share a bit about yourself with our global audience.
Hi, how are you? I'm doing fine. I am a retired nurse, pretty much. I have studied the not paralegal, but the paranormal since I was 6 or 7 years old, to be honest with you. It has intrigued me. I pride myself saying that I'm a conspiracy theorist and have been one for many, many years. And why? Why would I pride myself? Because we're the ones who make people think. We don't always have to be right, but we are the ones who make people think. We open the door. And it's not, oh yeah, this is true, this is true, this is, we're laying it out there like we're the detective or a good book. And so from that good story, people find the truths. And it's just like any science fiction movie. From those science fiction movies, many years later, we find the truths in them. And we wonder, oh, were they time travelers? How did they know? You know? So that's basically my story. Thank you.
What about projects that you're involved with? How do you occupy your time?
Oh, goodness. Since we're in this period of time with the COVID-19, I enjoy cooking. So I've been doing a lot of cooking. I have animals, and I play with my animals all the time.
What have you got? What animals do you have?
Oh, okay. I have 2 very large dogs, and then I have 3 feral cats. And when I tell you they're feral, they are, but all 3 of them managed to come get in my bed with me at night. And I've had them for several years, seriously. And they warm up to you. You know, they come a little bit at a time. And one of them that's really, really kind of wild. He's gotten to the point now at night he'll come and bite on my toe and say, "Hey, I'm here." And so it's animals are our gift, and I have learned that, and we are to take very good care of them.
Well, I'm sure they're grateful to have you as their family, you know.
They are.
It sounds like they could do much worse for family. And as for cooking, I also like to cook. I have noticed lately, and I wondered if you had noticed lately online, Depression era recipes. How to bake a cake without eggs, butter, sugar,
Oh,
that kind of thing.
I
Are you
haven't
seeing
heard of
this?
that. No.
Like, are we, you know, at the subconscious level, I'm almost thinking, so is this the beginning of another 10-year depression?
Oh.
Is that what's going on here? I mean, is that the
It
subliminal
feels like it, doesn't it?
that
It does feel like it.
let's hope not.
Yeah, because when you bake a cake, you can bake a cake using mayonnaise for your eggs.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes.
I did find out in my research why pound cake is called pound cake, and I bet you know.
No, I don't. What is it?
It's because it dates back to basically the colonists, colonial times, 1700s
Okay.
or so, when books were rare and not everybody knew how to read. And so
Oh.
there weren't a lot of recipe books, cookbooks.
Mhm.
So this was an
Right.
easy recipe to remember because all the ingredients you measured out 1 full pound. So 1 pound of flour, 1 pound of butter, 1 pound of sugar, knead all that together. And I'm sure people were adding in other
Hey,
stuff, but
that's what he
you know,
needs.
how hard is that to remember? Pound of this, pound of that.
Right.
And that's why pound cake is the consistency that it is, which is somewhat like a brick.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, we could talk all day about cooking, but
Yeah,
we
could.
are on to Taboo Topics with our next fabulous guest panelist, the infamous Mr. Smith. Richard Smith, please introduce yourself to those in viewerland who don't know you.
Thank you. Yes, and it's great to be on the show here too. My name is Richard Smith. I am also known in paranormal and UFO circles as UFO teacher. That's my pen name out there, and I've been involved with the alien contact and extraterrestrial phenomena since I was 4 years old. Both my wife and I have together since childhood. And my first awakening on this didn't come until the age of 21. So, and with that awakening, it was a total recall of everything I thought as a child was just a bad dream or a nightmare was actually a memory of these paranormal experiences or extraterrestrial experiences. And it all came back, flooding back. And at that point, I had a very clear vision as to who I am and what I was supposed to be doing. And that basically kicked it off and evolved from there. In the years that followed, I ended up starting off with doing the artwork, focusing on all subject matter related to alien contact, how it affects the human condition. That's where it all began. That evolved into doing seminars and lectures, which then turned into writing the books. You know, and I got back into the swing of writing the books in 2015. People tend to think that was the first book, but believe it or not, there was one before that I did in 2005. And then life kind of got in the way. There was a 10-year gap, and then the road opened up to getting back to it. And that's when I came out with The Moor, the Mason, and the Alien, Part 1, Call to Action, in 2015. And then 2018, I came out with the second one, the sequel, Part 2. And I'm working on the third one right now. Because of those books, my wife and I started the Human Origins Foundation, of which one of the main events hosted by it is the Human Origins Conference. And we are also executive council members for the New Mexico UFO Paranormal Forum, which is a group that meets monthly, although not now because of what's going on. The last couple of meetings have gotten nixed, but we usually meet monthly on the third Saturday and have different guest speakers come to speak to the group from all around the regional area. But that's right now, I'm basically focusing the time at home on writing the third book and getting part 3 done, which I want to get out for 2021 next year. And it's going to focus on some very important key aspects symbolized in the Invisible College. So that's what part 3 is going to focus on.
You have led a very interesting life, and I wanted to comment on something you talked about, that your experiences began when you were about 4. Is that correct?
Yes. I didn't realize it until I was 21 with the first awakening, but that was where the recall came, and I realized, oh, this
yeah. I think I've had something similar happen. Yeah. I don't have any, well, I still have doubts, but I had and I didn't really put these pieces together until much later, like you talk about an awakening. I read accounts of people saying they had had abduction experiences, ET abduction experiences, where they were left with screen memories that were Disney-like. Or I remember somebody talked about, I saw little blue people in overalls, little blue men in overalls. And those 2 images snapped with me because I had a couple of vivid nightmares at about age 4, age 3, age 4, which apparently is a classic time to abduct people because they're too young to be able to formulate words. So they can't tell anybody else what happened in any detail. Yeah. And of course, my mother said, you had a nightmare. Well, maybe I did. Maybe I did. I've avoided hypnotic regression all my life. What about you, Richard? Was it even necessary?
No, in fact, for me, after 21 and as the years went on, more and more stuff would come to the surface through my 20s, right into my 30s. And just to put that in perspective, I'm 49. I'm actually turning 50 this year in December. And so it's been a long and strange odyssey since the age of 21. But no, in fact, as far as hypnotherapy or regression of anything like that, there was an hypnotherapist who wanted to experiment on that with me. She tried it with me one time, and that it didn't come out the way people would normally expect. What happened was that while I was in the regression, a warning came out of me from a different entity towards the hypnotherapist, telling her to back off, and this is not allowed. This is not the time to be doing this. We will tell him on our own. So leave this one alone. And when I came out of it, I didn't even know I said that. She had turned as white as a ghost because I had a different voice coming out of me at that point, supposedly. And she says, okay, I pulled you out because we got to stop this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I was like, what happened? And it took her about 10 minutes to compose herself. And then she finally told me. I was like, oh, that was the chrome. Okay, well, then you crossed the wrong line, and now we have an answer. Leave it alone.
Fascinating, fascinating. And for all of you who have just tuned in, you have found us. Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. This is the April 12th, 2020 edition with my wonderful guest panelists, BoJenn Jennings and Richard Smith. I'm your host, Jean Broida, also known as Lightworker 111. I too am a lifelong UFO researcher, parapsychologist, conspiracy synthesist, connect the dots, and author of the book and ebook, Unknown Objects, the Top 10 US UFO Cases. Inviting some commentary there. Why are these the top 10 and not this other one over here? Well, let's talk about it. And the 10 cases in my book range from the Foo Fighters reported after World War II up to 1997, the Phoenix Lights, which was a mass sighting that many people alive today remember happened, but maybe don't know all the details. And I wrote this as an easy read, 10 chapters, 10 stories. It's a storybook. It happens to be a history book, but don't let that put you off. And I invite you to check it out on Amazon. If you've got Kindle Unlimited, it's a free read. Read this book, you'll know why you must be crazy not to believe in UFOs. So I'm an avid news hound, and I'm a regular contributor to thedailyconspiracy.com and some other online publications that delve into conspiracies and science, technology, futurism, and the perils of those. I write as Lightworker 111. My background includes degrees in computer science, education, and psychology, but I'm also, and have been since I was a teenager, a practicing mystic and witch, and I'm an astrologer. I read tarot cards. I'm highly intuitive, as are we, as well. We're all intuitive. I'm highly intuitive by virtue of the fact that I've cultivated these talents. And apparently I have some natural talent that other people don't have, but I don't claim to be the only psychic in the world. By any means, all of us have these talents. And what's interesting and exciting in the paranormal fields is that more and more and more truth seekers and star seeds are waking up in consciousness, just as Richard indicated. And as BoJenn will share with us, I'm sure, we're waking up in consciousness to realize that what we perceive as superficial reality may not actually be the profound truth. And this ties into that Matrix movie. And anybody who's watched it knows exactly what I'm talking about. And anybody who hasn't is completely mystified. I get that too. But what we're wondering, what I wonder as a person schooled in psychology is, what is the long-term effect of decades, 70 plus years, of suppression of UFO truth, specifically because UFOs is my bag, baby. Okay, what is the effect on the individual and society after 70 plus years of UFO cover-up? We talk about that kind of stuff on this show. And whether we're blessed or cursed, we live in these interesting times where light workers everywhere are awakening in mass to universal truths. We're all reaching the same conclusions, coming in, vectoring in from different angles. We're all reading the same source data, and the conclusions are inevitable because they're truthful. People are waking up to truths in numbers never before seen on Earth. And I think it's due in great part to technology, the double-edged sword. Certainly, everyone here on today's show, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, hopes that you will enjoy the taboo topics that we bring to you, as we intend to shed light in the dark corners of reality as we know it. And let's begin. I am thrilled to lead off Taboo Topics with Jean Broida with our first article. I'm a ufologist first and foremost, and I have brought someone else's article today. I often bring my own articles, but this one is very interesting. Let me get the credit for this first. This one is titled UFO Sightings by Astronauts. Let's see if there's an author tribute. Sources. We have 4 sources. Great Mysteries, UFOs by Robert Jackson. Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. The UFO Encyclopedia by John Spencer. And Genesis Revisited by Zachariah Sitchin, one of my favorite authors. So this is about, the title is UFO Sightings by Astronauts. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 accounts here. I'm going to read 3. And then I'll give you my opinion about them. And then we'll kick it around the round table a bit and see what we get here. So first, let's consider the case, the case of the story from 2 astronauts, Ed White and James McDivitt. Okay. In June 1965, Ed White, who was the first American to walk in space, and James McDivitt, were passing over Hawaii in a Gemini spacecraft when they saw a weird-looking metallic object. The UFO had long arms sticking out of it. McDivitt took pictures with a cinematic camera. Those pictures have never been released. Okay, so that's interesting. Here's number 2, James Lovell and Frank Borman. In December 1965, Gemini astronauts James Lovell and Frank Borman saw a UFO during their second orbit of their record-breaking 14-day flight. Borman reported that he saw an unidentified spacecraft some distance from their capsule. Gemini Control at Cape Kennedy told him that he was seeing the final stage of their own Titan booster rocket. Borman confirmed that he could see the booster rocket all right, but he could also see something completely different. And here's a dialogue from James Lovell's flight log, Gemini 7. Here's Lovell. He says, bogey at 10 o'clock high. Bogey, of course, is an unidentified aircraft in our space. And Capcom, that would be Houston, ground control. This is Houston. Say again 7, talking to the Gemini 7 capsule. Say again 7. And the astronaut Lovell replies, said, we have a bogey at 10 o'clock high. He repeats himself. Capcom, Gemini 7, is that the booster or is that an actual sighting? Lovell, we have several actual sighting. Capcom, estimated distance or size? Lovell, we also have the booster in sight. And so that's the end of that one. And finally, this one's a little longer. I waited this for last save this for last because it is a little longer and I want to get into this with my guests. We got the case of Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, Buzz Aldrin. According to the NASA astronaut Neil Armstrong, first man to walk on the moon, the aliens have a base on the moon and told us humans in no uncertain terms to get off and stay off the moon. According to unconfirmed reports, both Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin saw UFOs shortly after that historic landing on the moon in Apollo 11 on July 21st, 1969. Whoever wrote this says, I remember hearing one of the astronauts refer to a light in or on a crater during the television transmission, followed by a request from Mission Control for further information. Nothing more was heard. According to a former NASA employee, Otto Binder, unnamed radio hams with their own VHF receiving facilities that bypassed NASA's broadcasting outlets picked up the following exchange. Quoting that exchange, NASA. What's there? Mission Control calling Apollo 11. Apollo 11. These babies are huge, sir. Enormous. Oh my God. You wouldn't believe it. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft out there lined up on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the moon watching us. Unquote. A certain professor who wished to remain anonymous was engaged in a discussion with Neil Armstrong during a NASA symposium. Quoting from that symposium, Professor, what really happened out there with Apollo 11? Armstrong, it was incredible. Of course, we had always known there was a possibility. The fact is, we were warned off. There was never any question then of a space station or a moon city. Professor, how do you mean warned off? Armstrong, I can't go into details except to say that their ships were far superior to ours, both in size and technology. Boy, were they big and menacing. No, there was no question of a space station. Professor, but NASA had other missions after Apollo 11. Armstrong, naturally, NASA was committed at that time and couldn't risk panic on Earth, but it really was a quick scoop and back again. Finally, according to Dr. Vladimir Ajaja, quoting, Neil Armstrong relayed the message to Mission Control that two large, mysterious objects were watching them after having landed near the moon module. But this message was never heard by the public because NASA censored it, unquote. And according to this according to another Dr. Alexander Kazantsev, Buzz Aldrin took color movie film of the UFOs from inside the module and continued filming them after he and Armstrong went outside the capsule. The lunar module. Armstrong confirmed that the story was true, but refused to go into any further detail beyond admitting that the CIA was behind the cover-up. Now that's the end of that account. I just want to add as a postscriptum that my UFO research brought me to another personal anecdote from a man who purported to be one of Neil Armstrong's closest friends. And he had noticed that after the ticker tape parade that greeted the Apollo astronauts after they landed from their historic voyage to the moon and back, setting foot on the moon, the one small step, one great step, he noticed that Armstrong shunned public attention, the media limelight, and that ticker tape parade was the largest in U.S. history up to that point. You would think that he'd be put to work by NASA, promoting NASA, being a campaigner, a poster guy. But he wasn't. He became a recluse. So his friend went to visit him to see what was going on. This wasn't long after they got home, a few weeks after they got home. Aldrin let him in. He hadn't shaved in a while. He was looking kind of ragged and very depressed. They sat in the living room and his friend asked him, what's going on? And Aldrin said, well, I can't tell anybody. This is highly confidential, but I'm telling you that when we got to the moon, do you remember during the live feed that you saw a cloud of dust kicked up and then there was a change of the landing pattern? And the guy said, yeah, I remember that. He said, well, that was on instructions from Houston. When we got within eyesight of the landing zone in the Sea of Tranquility, there were two UFOs dead ahead of us. And the American public, everybody in the world tuned in, was going to see those. And so I quick radioed Houston and we got instructions and they said, fire some rockets and kick up dust to obscure the camera while you reposition for a different entrance angle. And that's what they did. They came in from a different angle so that the two UFOs in question, that light, I think that was referred to in the article here, that they were not visible to the average person. And the other aspect of this that warrants a mention, that is mentioned in some of these other accounts that I did not read today for the sake of brevity and to let other people have a chance to talk, is that one of the astronauts early on coined the term Santa Claus for UFOs because all the astronauts knew they were not supposed to talk about UFOs when anyone outside of a government agency could hear them talking. Certainly the general public should never, ever, ever know because of the panic factor and also the control factor. And I remember as a child seeing these live streams on grainy black and white TVs in the 1960s, early 1970s, and hearing this term Santa Claus. There's a whole lot of Santa Claus up here. And nobody at the time thought about it. We weren't thinking that our government was lying to us or covering anything up. We didn't think they were using a secret code right in front of our face. but they have been, and they continue to do so. At this point, with UFO disclosure, it's doubtful the U.S. federal government will ever fully disclose full participation of that government in UFO history. The state of affairs now, as of about a year ago, when there was a flurry of disclosure activity with senators being briefed, the president was briefed, and the Navy pilots had come forward a month before that with the Tic Tac UFO sightings. So the cat was out of the bag. And now the official disclosure narrative is the hardware is real, but there's no such thing as aliens. So that all said, I'm interested in hearing what my esteemed guest panelists to say about that. Take it away, either one of you. We have with us today BoJenn Jennings and Richard Smith. What do you guys think? Astronaut sightings of UFOs in space, NASA cover-up ordered by the CIA. Truth or hokum?
Well, my first thought when you were reading the story and you got to James McGibbon and Ed White, and my first thought was, what, and I read it yesterday, what were these hands coming out from this UFO? What did they see?
Well, they weren't hands, they were arms, as in armatures, I think.
Okay.
But
he
pointy
didn't go
things.
into
In other
how
words,
they-
not a bubble. This was not a regular round sphere. This was not an ice crystal. This was, in other words, these were not any of the things that astronauts are told to look for before reporting a Santa Claus.
Right.
You're saying it looks like a machine that has rods sticking out of it, basically.
I wish they had, I'm sure that there's writing on this further than what's been reported. I would love to know how long those arms were, those appendages. What did they look like? Were they bendable?
Well, I doubt they had a chance to, everybody's hurtling along unless it was pacing the spacecraft. It's not clear they had time to make those assessments. But although they took images, and I'm sure NASA has analyzed the heck out of those images, and those are images the public will never see.
Right. That's right. They won't. And that's a shame because we need to know. It's interesting because when you got into Frank Borman, I had been a flight attendant for Eastern, and I had met Frank Borman a couple of times. And so this is back in the early 70s. And I was wanting desperately to ask him about the UFO because of my experiences as a child. And I never got up the courage to ask him. And I wish I had. But reading the article refreshed my memory of it. And that was good. So
what do you think, Richard? I know you've got a lot to say about this. I just sense that my psychic self is going, he knows more than he's telling, than he'll tell.
When I hear these accounts, it reminds me of the infamous phrase from the movie Contact: "Why have one when you can build two for twice the price? Only this one can be kept a secret." And what they're referring to is that was a coded and cryptic phrase in that movie for the fact that we've been running two very different space programs side by side. The legitimate tin can one, like Mercury and Apollo, and then the illegitimate one that no one's supposed to know about because it's reverse engineered alien technology. What you were describing sounds like a very advanced probe, maybe 100% alien or something between alien and military collaboration there, something reverse engineered. But a lot of these, you find that when stuff starts getting leaked out, the military was already, most notably the Navy, was already involved with it 20 years beforehand. So, we seem to stand in awe of the fact that your smartphone showed up in 2009, and even before that, BlackBerries. But cell phone technology was already in existence 20 years prior to that. And of course, the question is, where did that come from? We are not smart enough to figure that out on our own. then again, you go back in time, you realize the Egyptians had invented the light bulb 5,000 years before Thomas Edison. So, you know, what comes around goes around, and what we're seeing out there, you know, it's either a combination of us collaborating with them, which is why everything is so top secret, because what we're collaborating with is of questionable character. Are they the good guys? Are they the bad guys? And unfortunately, all fingers seem to point at our government officials making deals with the bad guys by accident and getting duped into that kind of an arrangement. As opposed to listening to the offers that were made by the good guys in the first place to give us a better direction to follow.
So you're talking about, I believe you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, President Truman being approached by aliens, a species of aliens, a race of aliens, benevolent to human beings, who offered advanced spiritual teachings to elevate consciousness on Earth in exchange for the United States putting down its nuclear arsenal. And Truman said,
Yes.
no way, Jose. And then
And,
some months later, 6 months later, gray aliens, some species of gray aliens came along and said, we will offer you high technology in exchange for bases, biosampling, and there was a third thing I thought. And that deal was made under Truman and then solidified as, I think it's called Grenada Treaty under Eisenhower. Is that is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, and they knew where to hit us below the belt because it was right at the right time when they watched us drop 2 bombs on Japan. And then the horror show that came out of that from Time Life magazine showing the photographs of what came from the fallout from that. And then everyone going into a panic, realizing just how horrific that is and how vulnerable Washington, D.C. was, with Stalin making all sorts of threats left and right to, you know, arm himself and basically cut himself off from Europe and the Allied powers for good. So all of a sudden it was realized, wow, we're all looking at these photos from Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That could happen to Washington, D.C., and Stalin was just crazy enough to do it. So knowing that paranoia existed and that distrust and the inability for us to get past our tribal spear chucking mentality at the time, this is when the bad guys came and are like, oh yeah, they're primed for the taking. We'll make a deal with them. And that will unfortunately sell the American public into a further form of indentured servitude. Which is why, you know, it's not a case of people going into panic. I mean, there's always going to be that small percentage, you know, that hides behind their own religious beliefs and was like, oh my God, aliens are real. What does that say about my beliefs? Yeah, there's that small segment. The bigger problem is the sense of utter and total betrayal over every layer and aspect of our economic structure in our society. If these things existed since the beginning of time, then why the hell am I paying taxes to the federal government? Why the hell am I even having a day job with a pointless form of employment that could have been satisfied with Tesla technology and or alien technology? Why is there an electric company that could have easily been abolished? For that matter, why the hell is there a cheeseburger when you could have easily put McDonald's out of business? So this is the problem. It's an economic backlash and a psychological backlash to utter and total betrayal, depression, people just being like, why the hell did I even buy into this damn Constitution of the United States when it's a complete fraud?
So the climate in the United States after World War II, and I agree with your analysis to the letter, Richard. The climate, because I am this old and I was a child in the 1960s. The climate in the United States in the 1960s, this is now 15 years after the end of World War II, not that long. There was a definite lingering after effect, and the Cold War was being pushed, that even after the hot war of World War II, where bombs are being lobbed and people are being shot down and atrocities are occurring, afterwards, former ally Russia all of a sudden swivels and becomes an enemy, and we've got this Cold War going on, and that produced the race to space. The
Yeah.
Russians launched Sputnik in the fall of 1957. They put a dog in space. They put a monkey in space, and the United States freaked out.
Yeah.
And that led, of course, to JFK's immortal, "We go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard." And that got the
Right.
Apollo program going. But well before that, groundwork had been laid that most Americans still have never heard about. And my question always is, given the climate in post-World War II, yes, I can somewhat understand how 12 probably white guys in the Majestic 12 group, there might have been one token black guy there. And I'm not going to apologize for my language. This is how it is. Okay.
No, I
A
understand.
bunch of white guys, and I love white guys. I love black guys. I love guys. I love gals. I love people, in general, but specific people irritate me. Okay. And when 12 guys advise the president of the United States to keep things hush hush because they, the cover story is "We fear panic." Yes, there probably would have been some concern, but had we spent the last 70 years spending these trillions of dollars of unaccountable black operations money, not only reverse engineering UFOs to figure out how they work and take advantage of that technology, but also mind conditioning the people not to believe, instead of mind controlling the people to think you must be crazy to believe in UFOs, we could have spent the same amount of time, energy, and money convincing people that you're crazy not to believe in UFOs because they exist. When people ask me, do I believe? I don't believe. I know. My government knows UFOs exist. I don't have to believe. There's documents on the CIA website, the FBI website, the Black Vault website, all over the place. There's documents, if you want to go looking them down, of meetings talking in very serious ways about UFOs. I don't have to believe it. I don't have to see one in the sky. I don't have to be an experiencer. I'm an historian, and I know they exist. This is where I'm coming from.
Yeah. There's that, what parallels the, why have one when you can build two for twice the price, the legitimate program and the illegitimate program. What parallels that too, which only enhances this rabid sense of don't disclose anything, hide it all, no matter what anybody says, is that along with your illegitimate space program is your illegitimate non-representational government.
Don't they call that secret space program now, by the way? We've got these insiders coming out, secret space program.
They call it the illegitimate program. Everybody wants to sexy name. Oh, the secret space. Well, it's not very secret if you're talking about it. So what's the secret? So it's an illegitimate space program. That's what it is, because it wasn't sanctioned by legitimate tax dollars. And wherever this double dipping of our tax dollars is going to, we already pay legitimate taxes at the state, county, and local level. We're not supposed to be paying federal taxes. That comes from the state. In Vegas, they have a name for it. It's called double dipping. So if I'm already paying my federal taxes through the state and I have to pay federal taxes on top of what I already paid to the state, to the federal government, then where the hell is that second set of federal taxes going? It's not going to any infrastructure because the state government handles that, okay? They already hand money off to the federal government with your state taxes. That's it. And the infrastructure is handled that way. This is a fact. So if you know how your illegal federal taxes are being manipulated by the very fact that you're paying them, then you know that's what's funding these black projects and where this money is disappearing into the Pentagon, okay? So you have to borrow a term from another person I heard this from, you have your breakaway civilization, you have your shadow government, you have your illegitimate, illegal space program coming from that illegitimate government, and therefore you have your illegitimate military. So there is a whole second culture that has come out of this, and to just land this in front of the American people, the first thing out of their mouth, you, me, and the next door neighbor is, I thought my representational government was supposed to be protecting me from this. Why are you taking your orders from a government that doesn't even represent me, or I didn't vote for, or I didn't sanction with my tax dollars? Where's my tax dollars? I want my refund. And you're going to have a holy hell of a rebellion on your hand just from an economic perspective.
Agreed. BoJenn, any last thoughts about astronauts seeing UFOs before we move on to our next taboo topic?
Yes, yes. And I want to ask Richard. Okay, so we know that Neil Armstrong and Aldrin saw these at the landing site. Okay, they saw the aliens. And so we understand that NASA went back, even though they reported this. And now I'm hearing through social media, I've seen some articles that our president, Trump, is planning on starting missions to the moon to start mining. Have you read that?
Yes, and my wife Linda is very into that as well. This is a big, big problem, and it shows. Not pinning it on any one representative, because there's more wheels turning than just who's ever in the White House, but this shows overall our ignorance and our arrogance and our colonial mentality that we still haven't crawled out of yet. So, and what, to get more to the point, what inflames that even further is that you have these small-minded people making these corporate decisions of, I'm going to go out there and mine the moon. I'm going to go mine the asteroid belt. I'm going to go mine planet Mars or Europa or the rings of Saturn. Okay, good luck with that, because there are no international treaties to protect those territories. So one corporation goes out there, and then another one goes out there and says, no, we have a right to this. No, you don't. Well, my corporate security team, AKA militia, is more powerful than yours, and here we have interstellar war. Then you throw a third silent party into the mix, which is an extraterrestrial race that has already laid claim to certain parts of our solar system long ago, and now you're going to piss them off. So now you have intergalactic warfare with a species that is far superior to us and could easily wipe us off the planet just because of a very poor economic decision. Everything always comes down to economics. War, famine, politics, it's all economics. So for us to go out there and start mining the moon is an idiot notion. We're asking to get our asses handed to us because we can't even get along with ourselves. You have no right as a race of people to be going anywhere outside of your own planet if you still have friction and tribal warfare between your own international borders. Because now as an American, I go out there and I run into someone from North Korea, they're going to blow my ass right out of existence and not even think twice about it. And who's going to stop them? If I'm in a position where I come out on the winning side of that equation and I have to kill them, well, what message does that send back to Earth? The movie 2010 with Roy Scheider was all about that. There was a huge amount of friction on the ship between the Russian cosmonauts and the American astronauts because they were hearing what was going on back home between Russia and the United States, and they didn't know what side to take as astronauts. So this is what you run into. What if you even have a so-called United Nations representation on a big old fat spaceship that goes out to the solar system or other solar systems? Well, what happens when they get news that, you know, we're going to war with each other and blowing the hell out of each other? What does that do to the crew on that ship psychologically? Do they start tearing each other apart? Do they start creating their own factions? This is the problem. We are not mature enough to be doing anything because we don't even have a mature intergalactic treaty on how to treat each other when we're out there.
So look,
yeah, go
can
ahead.
I ask you, what do you think? Okay, so the extraterrestrials, they're watching this. And so my experience with them is they don't interfere. They allow things to happen. And I'll go more into that. But are they going, yes, they're going to allow us to blow ourselves up. I mean, I hate saying that,
But not with nukes, right? Nukes are right out because they ran
no, I
the
mean,
space-time continuum.
Well, you look at the
Yeah.
presidential thing in the United States, and then we're at the point now where we could kill one another. We could get into a civil war. And is this what's expected of us?
I don't think they have any expectations about us. We're a
They
science
don't, do
project.
they?
I think we're a science project. And some of them regard us perhaps as pets, but I think we're
I
much more like
know.
ants in an ant farm. What do you
I
think?
agree. I'm with you on that. I agree.
Not all of them.
You have two sides to the equation there. You have, there's an old ancient esoteric understanding about this. It basically comes down to flesh and bone versus wood and stone, okay? Flesh and bone represents the benevolent factions of the galactic community that have a vested interest in seeing us evolve in ecological balance with the planet, Mother Earth, Gaia, and have the human race evolve spiritually, okay, with our technology. And not banning that. I mean, you know, I love my smartphone and my fax machine just like everybody else, but I know that what that's doing, what that technology is turning the younger generation into is not so good. We are of an older generation where we can look at it and go, ooh, and ah, and appreciate it. But the other generation has been brainwashed to take it for granted, and therefore it becomes embedded as part of their life to the point where they don't even look up to see the sun anymore. They're buried in their phones. But the benevolent factions are all about the flesh and bone factor. On the opposing team, you have wood and stone. And those are the malevolent factions that are invested in the tradable commodities within the solar system for each and every planet that what they see as slaves just so happen to live on, which is us. Built-in slave base. Oh, look, they're indigenous. We'll turn them into what we want. And they don't even have to waste their time importing slaves from anywhere else because there's a psychological factor with using what's in the given environment. So, but both of them tend to sit at the table on one thing, not letting the human race eliminate itself. Because if we poison the planet the way we've been doing to the point of no return, there's no investment left economically for the bad guys, and there's no human race left for the good guys. So there seems to be that tenuous understanding between the two that, okay, we can't let them eliminate themselves altogether because we want the tradable commodities they live on, and you want them to evolve. If it was ever to come to a push and shove scenario where we wake up and instead of just 20% of the planet knowing what's going on, the other 80% actually wakes up, that forces the bad guys to relinquish their ties. And that might cause some friction there to where they don't want to let that go because, you know, who wants to give up power? Who wants to give up profit when greed is eternal? And that might cause a case for, okay, let's invade and put them back in their place. In which case the benevolent factions would step in and say, no, you're changing the rules. You know how this game is played. They woke up, the planet belongs to them, get out. So there is that built-in safety mechanism politically within the galactic community.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Go ahead, BoJenn.
Okay, I have another question. I'm going to get off a little bit into the 5G. And what is your thoughts of what we're going through right now? Is this tied into the 5G?
No, because there's not a whole lot of companies that can offer that 5G. There's really only one company out there that can pull it off successfully.
Okay, but what I'm asking, is the 5G, in your opinion, alien? Is it being installed? My thought is it's being installed for them.
Is there an alien tie-in to 5G?
Yes, that's my feeling.
And I think anything in the way of the evolution of cellular service comes from Tesla, which comes from aliens. So no matter how you look at it, it always goes back to that.
All right. Well, at this point, I am going to step in and welcome anyone who has recently tuned into Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. You have found us It is the April 12th, 2020 episode with my esteemed guest panelists, BoJenn Jennings and Richard Mr. Smith. We are having a great time here talking about taboo topics, and it is time in the show to introduce our second panelist with his paranormal news article or text. That is Richard Smith. And by the way, we are broadcast live on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Broida. Please head over there, click the subscribe button, and right next to it is a little bell. And if you click the bell, you'll get notifications when something is live streaming up to YouTube. That's Taboo Topics with Jean, Broida, Broida. You can find me on tabootopics.life/shows and multicast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. So now, without further ado, I bring you the illustrious published author, Richard Smith.
Oh, thank you. I decided to just read a couple of chapters, chapter 6 and 7, from the book I published in 2015. The Moor, the Mason, and the Alien, A Call to Action. And I think they're short enough to get through it in about 12 minutes. But chapter 6, titled, Let the Games Begin. Going like gangbusters in full tilt machine gun style, it's exhilarating to engage the crowd mentality of a captivated audience. This is especially intriguing when you know the spectators in attendance represent the programmed or brainwashed victims caught in the middle. My words, coming from elsewhere, carry the scathing elegance of a silver tongue and the brash fearlessness of a golden heart. This is done with the ultimate purpose of breaking the programmed white Masonic ego of the individual, which is how the healing process begins. This could not piss off the bad guys anymore if you tried. Taking the 80-20 scenario and turning it around one person at a time is what drives the white Masonic elite all sorts of panic button crazy. You see, the 80-20 scenario itself represents one of those things they fear the most: exposure via purification, elimination, and transformation of the beast. In other words, educating the masses. In such a scenario, I am allowed to share all of this with you as long as only 20% of you are listening. That's 2 out of every 10 people. This is why we do not have real democracy. If we did, we would be allowed to reach the other 80% without having my head severed from my body. As of now, 8 out of 10 of you have already tuned me out. This is why Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., and Mohandas Gandhi were killed. They violated the 80-20 scenario, heading straight for a 60-40 ratio that was only about 2 inches away from reaching 50% of the population. This is forbidden at all costs by the Greys and the white Masonic elite. 80% of the consumer slave population must remain dumb, ignorant, and unaware. On the other hand, it should be understood that it's quite a different thing to experience a direct head-on confrontation with one of these veiled yet highly invasive bastards. This will happen at least once in your life for 2 very good reasons. First, it is a test of one's mettle by the sisterhood. You've seen these type of tests represented by the Invisible College, whether it be Paul Atreides' psychic endurance of pain in the black box, Luke Skywalker's ominous confrontation in the swamps of Dagobah, or Neo's death-defying rescue of Morpheus. It all symbolizes the same thing: the sisterhood taking a vested interest in one's strength of character. Second, it should be understood that the very act of direct confrontation by these uber-Aryan, pro-reptilian underlings is itself an act of desperation via the politics and propaganda of fear. In the case of those like myself, these Capo Goomba misfits realize that hiding behind the selective ignorance of the audience or the stupidity of the crowd mentality can no longer conveniently serve their heinous agendas of manipulation. In this respect, I would have to say that the tireless efforts of my dark-skinned and/or female predecessors over endless millennia are finally paying off as the crowd mentality of corporatism has slowly evolved into the proper direction of a deprogrammed, progressive global democracy. Once these Goomba thugs realize that it's no longer useful to hide behind the crowd or use the audience against you, it becomes their sole agenda to hurt you in some other way while arrogantly dancing around and skirting the edges of the strict hands-off mandate laid down by the crone and the rest of the sisterhood. Yes, I know. You would have to be a complete imbecile to think that the sisterhood wouldn't be aware of this coming around the bend. You would really have to be a total schmuck to willingly aggravate the hell out of the crone as well. But that's what happens when you are dealing with a bunch of psychotic, inhuman Schweinhunds who perceive themselves as the favored Chetu elite, protected by fleets of lawyers and boatloads of endless corporatism and political cronyism. As for me, this test or confrontation began on my way down to Roan Mountain in 2001 via a bizarre mountain pass through the Blue Ridge and Smoky Mountains. It was my first time ever witnessing this mysterious part of the United States, and events were already leading down a tenuous path. When I think back on this in hindsight, the whole thing reeks of jinn, tricksters who operate by their own code of psychological torment and metaphysical hijinks. Of course, the route I was intending to take had been blocked and detoured due to what seemed to be construction work. And why not? I was about to enter an absolute unholy nightmare, a secondary road path that might as well have been spray painted onto the side of the mountain for what it was worth. This is a very kind and generous way of saying it should have been banned from all travel completely. It was like a muddy, slippery, high-wire slope that some sick twist in the highway department actually considered safe to drive on. The only real guarantee would be some soiled, tighty-whities should anyone actually make it to the other side alive. If you made the mistake of sneezing or farting, your best option would be to stick your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye as your car went flying over the edge into a white abyss and your death. Yeah, good luck with that. The white abyss I am referring to would be the actual Smoky Mountains and their associated Blue Ridge Mountains that run the state borders of both North Carolina and Tennessee. On that day, you couldn't see more than a 6-foot radius around you, as there existed a tremendous billowing shock of thick, milky white clouds encircling you everywhere. On top of that, there were these old rickety wooden guardrails that barely clung to the edges of their pass. By the way, calling them guardrails is an overstatement. These rails wouldn't have been able to stop anything, including the air you breathe, from going over the edge. Oh, and let's not forget the rain. The lovely rain. You know, that stuff that guarantees every last thing your tire treads touch will be as slippery as a fish doing an Irish jig on a frozen pond. Comprised of only 2 scrawny lanes, the mountain pass was a complete joke, as there would be no way in hell you could turn around and go back. You had 3 options to consider: drive forward and attempt to live, hope that no one else smacked into your car, or just simply plummet to your death. Of course, you could do like I did and explore a 4th option: have an irate bumblebee fly into the car window and wreak all manner of havoc upon yours truly, the driver. You would swear that this thing had a definite agenda to take me out right then and there. This bee was exhibiting a level of pissed off I never knew existed in such an insect. Here I am swatting at it, attempting to get my car window open fast enough to let it out while it dive-bombed me left and right. Swatting and buzzing back and forth over and over, the little bastard just simply would not leave. Anyone seeing this would have had no choice but to assume that I was either over-medicated or highly inebriated. What timing the bee had, too. It couldn't have been planned any better if you tried. The mountain pass had suddenly exposed a convenient bend in the road. No, not a gradual bend. Why the hell would we want that when you could actually have a mean and nasty bend, the kind that guaranteed a front row seat right into the afterlife? Here comes the bee again, swatting at it. Now the damn thing had sandwiched itself between my right eyelid and my eyeglasses, just for spite. It was getting ugly as the bend in the road was coming up faster than expected. I could see one of those magnificent guardrails staring me down right at the end of the bend. Okay, I had enough of this happy horseshit. I had to take off my glasses slowly to get to the bee. I knew it was either get stung in the eye or go over the edge of the pass or get stung in the hand and live. I grabbed the little shit before he could get away and flung him into the passenger side door. In doing so, I lost control of the steering wheel and began to hydroplane into the bend. My heart, stomach, and anus all seemed to meet up at the same time in the back of my throat as the front passenger tire took out the guardrail and went over the edge, and everything came to an immediate ass-grinding halt, as if frozen in time and space. To this day, I cannot honestly say what actually happened in that unmoving zone of time, mere seconds that seemed to span a light year. There was no sound, there was no taste, touch, or smell. It felt as if my brain had been dislodged and exited from the back of my cranium, only to hover above me for a few brief moments before re-entering my skull again. The only other experience with a similar comparison was when the Crohn's started the whole downloading thing. Although there was no sound otherwise, I could hear a faint voice lingering on the edge of what was left of my sanity. At first, it came across as a crackling hiss like that of a poorly tuned radio station with white noise and broken verbal syllables. It began to come in clearer as if my brain was being tuned to this specific signal. As the transmission gained clarity, I realized who the voice might belong to in an instant. I hadn't heard the sound of her voice in many years since she passed away. Yet here I was, 16 years later, getting a metaphysical broadcast from what sounded like Grandma. Ricky, not your time yet. On a journey. You must finish it. Be careful, Ricky. A monster in the forest. Face of a priest. Will trick you in the night. I love you all. I am here. Find the Yeti and be careful of the troll. It is a trickster. Be ready when it comes for you. Has already made its first move against you. Not your time to leave this world. This action is not allowed. Wake up. It is a violation. Wake up, Ricky. Must be corrected. We are here to watch this unfold. Wake up now. The zone was dissipating rapidly. My senses were coming back to life. The air tasted different and had the scent of lilacs or hyacinths for some reason. The transmission was fading out, but I could breathe again. As I was attempting to force my way back to a coherent state of mind, I realized I was still sitting in the driver's seat of my minivan. In my semi-lucid state, I thought I felt movement under me as if the vehicle itself was slowly rolling backwards. I hit the brakes and looked ahead to see the guardrail demolished. It was dangling way out over the edge of the bend in the pass, hanging by who knows what. Even so, here I was with what I gathered to be all four tires sitting firmly on the ground and nowhere near the edge of the road or the guardrail. And I remembered the phrase from Grandma, has already made its first move against you. To the right of me was that damned bumblebee again. It was actually sitting on the passenger seat, looking at me while emanating a frequency of raw disdain. It slowly rose from the seat and stopped to hover mid-air, just long enough to exhibit an action that seemed akin to spitting, choking, or gagging. The contempt I sensed from it at first gave way to fearful trepidation. It slowly backed away, never losing eye contact with me, and escaped out the passenger window. I had never witnessed an insect move backwards in flight in such a calculated manner. It was eerie to see. As it left my vehicle, it headed directly towards the bend in the pass, gliding over the wrecked guardrail. As it disappeared into the white smoky chasm, the guardrail let go of its last remaining tether and followed the vexed hornet into the swirling oblivion. I could hear a distant howling cackle roll from the clouds. Wake up now. It was the blasted honking of about 16 car horns that eventually brought me back into reality. Traffic had come to a complete standstill behind me. Didn't they see what had just happened? And how did everyone come to a stop like this and not smack into each other under these conditions? For that matter, why the hell was I still alive? My heart was hammering away as if it was caught in a high-speed taiko session with my ribs being used as bocce sticks. On a journey, must finish it. My hand found the gear shift somehow, and I slowly shifted the car into drive. Gradually, I accelerated in a forward motion and passed the bend in the road. A cringing pulse of fright, similar to that I had often felt in certain alien-based scenarios, ran up and down my spinal cord. Part of me expected to see some damn thing reach out of the abyss and pull both myself and the car into it. As the distance grew, the overwhelming nerve-shattering spell of the experience began to settle in the back of my mind. Crawling my way back to coherency, the blinding abyss began to yield as if conceding to defeat. I could see the light of the sun piercing through as it revealed the end of the mountain pass. Slamming the accelerator all the way down, I plowed my way through the exiting passageway and made it out the other side. The message lingered on my mind. Find the Yeti and be careful of the troll. It is the trickster. Be ready when it comes for you. Now traversing a more direct road, I came to terms with what the episode on the mountain pass meant at that point. I knew what was about to happen. Whatever the scheming bumblebee actually was, it would return once again and attempt to interfere with the path I was on. This was just the beginning of the journey. As Admiral Kirk once said, here it comes. That was chapter 6. And I didn't want to take
Chapter 6 of which book now? Let
Uh,
viewers know your title.
the Moor,
And me.
the Mason, and the Alien. A call
Oh, there
to-
we go. The Moor, the Mason, and the alien. Hold it
Yeah.
up there a little more, Richard. Don't be shy.
Sorry. There you go. I know it's backwards on the screen.
A call to action. It's forward on my screen, so I think viewers will see it forwards, backwards too, perhaps. The Moor, the Mason, and the Alien. A call to action by Richard L. Smith. Am I right?
Just Richard Smith. That's it.
Richard Smith.
Yeah.
And where is that available?
They can get it online at Amazon or Barnes and Noble.
There you go.
Okay.
So, was this a bumblebee or a hornet or a bee?
I saw it as a very nasty bumblebee, which I never expected to be that nasty. But it acted.
So, do you think it was a robotic bee?
Because
I've written about robotic bees.
it could have been something like that scent.
What was the year? I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. I just have a bunch of questions. What year ish? Decade even.
2001.
Okay.
2001. Yeah.
I'm just speculating.
It does.
That does seem like very strange bee behavior.
It does. It does tie in with chapter 7, what I talk about there, which gives more of an idea of where the bee came from.
BoJenn?
You refer to the bee, the bumblebee, as a troll, too. Was the bumblebee the troll?
It was an omen of things to come, and the following chapter after that, since chapter 6, which I just read, actually set the tone for that, what was happening at the time when I was having this experience. Chapter 7 gets into what comes after that, and then there's the confrontation with the entity I refer to as the troll.
So let me ask you, so was this, I mean, I know that you asked, was it alien machinery built, but did you think that this was possibly an alien? Was there lost time? Were you interfered with? I got the sense that you had lost time.
Yeah, with what I was describing there seemed to be some kind of gap of time where I thought I was going over the edge and didn't, and some other form of communication interceded to
That's
stop,
what I picked up.
to basically counteract the illusion or the influence that this thing that looked like a bumblebee was trying to perpetrate. So,
and you said that your perception was that one of your wheels had gone off the edge, the one that took out the guardrail.
Right.
To take out a guardrail like that to where it's completely detached and hangs a while in space and then falls on down, that's quite a bit of force, even a rickety guardrail, I would think. So suggesting that some part of the car impacted it. And then you say when you became fully conscious, all four wheels were on hard ground, solid ground.
Yeah.
Enough time had elapsed that 16 cars had been back to behind. Had you paid attention to traffic behind you up to that point? Was there a lot of traffic, no traffic, a little traffic?
There was a little bit of traffic because everybody had to go slow because of how dangerous the travel conditions were with that construction detour at the time.
Can I ask you, is this fictional or is this nonfiction? Did this happen to you?
Nonfiction, yeah. No, it's an account of my experiences leading up to what I teach about in the book, the things I've learned. So that's actually part of the first half of that book. And what I did was I split it in half. Both halves are tied together. Okay. It's not like there's a division there, but the first half more so focuses on how I got to the point. How did I get there? What happened through the years? What were the experiences? What was the confrontations, the contacts? And then I bring it up to a certain point right at the middle of the book, and then it jumps into all the stuff I learned from those experiences in the second half of the book. So that's how I ended up dividing it in half like that.
I think it's interesting because I wrote a supernatural spiritual book that took place in the in the Appalachians, and I have a driving scene that's, as you're reading, I'm thinking, gosh, that sounds like my words about the going. So it's a little off topic, but I thought, wow, that's pretty.
It may be off topic, but it's a good illustration of synchronicity,
Yes, it is.
which I represent with the 111s in my moniker, Lightworker 111. That's for people who see ones on digital displays, or twos or threes, or 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. And it's not that we see these numbers, it's that in my case, I attach some sort of cosmic significance to them, that something is attempting to get it's. And here's how it happens. I talk to myself. I'm just one of those people that has an interior monologue, and I spend a lot of time alone. And sometimes I talk to myself aloud especially if I have an epiphany, come to a realization. And it happened today. I had a realization in the kitchen. I made a resolve to do something. I went to put my hot drink into the microwave to heat it up some more, and the digital display on the clock is 1111, as if to affirm the resolution that I had just made. And if this happened once or twice, I wouldn't think much about it, but this has gone on for a long time, and I thought I was the only one, but I'm not. Lots of people see these numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that. That's incredible, and I hope it has piqued viewers' interest to go forth and read more. Get your book and read all about it. Get all your books and read all about it, and especially experiencers out there, you are not alone. And not every experiencer feels capable of writing a book, because perhaps they don't think they have enough content to fill a book, or they just don't think they have the ability to write a book or the time to write a book. Take heart, all of you who haven't had your voices lifted to a wider audience. Take heart that you are not alone. It's very clear you're not alone. And if you found us here, it's no accident. That's more synchronicity. And here is Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, broadcast Sunday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, tabootopics.life/shows, and multicast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. Thanks for tuning in. What else have we got to ask Richard, or comment to Richard BoJenn about his sharing of extraordinary paranormal experience?
Richard is incredible. Thank you so much. First of all, I love your knowledge. I love the way you think. You say the things that I know in my head, but I can't express what you say. I know what's going on politically. It's the same thing that you're saying. And I think it's phenomenal that you're able to speak my words for me. But I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I know you had a question about the troll before.
Right.
Without giving too much away for what follows in the book, it really amps up and gets a lot more aggressive after that with what goes on that follows. But it turns out, just so you have kind of like context of where that was going, the troll turns out to be an extraterrestrial entity from ages ago, who knew me in one of my former lifetimes. So now we're getting into reincarnation repeating itself, history repeating itself. And all of a sudden in that confrontation, those memories came back, and I knew exactly who he was. And I confronted him on that, in that there's this final confrontation that takes place. And it was realized he and his cronies, so to speak, had been looking for me for quite a long time, because I was the one that got away long ago. And it gets a lot deeper than that. I'm just giving the bullet points, but it turns out it's an extraterrestrial being that basically had it out for me in the first place. And this was like a 10,000-year-old grudge that was coming to the surface at this point. And I didn't realize it until I came in contact with them, and then the memories flooded back. And then it gets into the people I met, the quote unquote mountain people, who somehow had a connection to the Sasquatch in that area. So that plays into it as well. So people are, they're probably going to get into that story if they like things that cross over between reincarnation and extraterrestrial contact and the Sasquatch and so forth. They're going to enjoy reading what comes after that chapter.
I do have a question. And do you think that we are going to come into a global, to a world knowledge of extraterrestrials? Do you think it's going to happen anytime soon, or any prediction?
I think it's inevitable. And I think we're reaching a critical state at this point where it's going to have to push, and in many ways come in the form maybe a release of first contact, like a regimented program of things rolling out of who has been here since the beginning of time, and that they've always been here watching over us. And I'm just talking about the good guys, all right? The bad guys, well, okay, we'll have to deal with them when the time comes. But like I said, that has to deal with waking up and realizing, oh, this planet really does belong to me. You don't belong here, okay? But the benevolent factions, they've been here for forever. It's like in the movie The Abyss. Those entities, they had been on Earth for so long in that deep oceanic trench that they might as well have been considered indigenous to the planet Earth at that point. But technically they were extraterrestrials. So you kind of get into a gray area at that point. Well, what's indigenous and what's extraterrestrial? Okay, how long do you have to live on a planet before you're considered a native to the planet? So there's that as well. We're going to realize that we have partners on this planet. We have neighbors on this planet who did come from planet 10, but they've been here for so long, they might as well be considered, indigenous to us, like dogs and cats and birds and bees, okay? So that's going to be a serious wake-up call for us. And I think that's going to be the easiest way to bring forth any form of first contact, is to say, hey, they've been here. Where do you think, who do you think was talking to the Egyptians and the Mayans? Who do you think was talking to the Navajo and the Hopi, or the Montauk's, or the Olmecs? Okay, it was the same people all along.
Yeah, and what's really interesting, Richard, is how many starseeds, light workers, awakened people knew in school when they were told that these ancient civilizations that had pyramids and advanced mathematics and agriculture, sophisticated art, that they were primitive. We knew that wasn't true. It doesn't stand to reason. You can't have it both ways. You can't have primitive people and advanced technologies and advanced arts. It doesn't jive.
The fossil record doesn't lie either.
Right, and there's this big gap in that. Once you integrate a multitude of disciplines, archaeology, geology, anthropology, astronomy, physics, metaphysics, and then combine legend and lore, so-called, human history is what I call it. For the longest time, the so-called myths from around the world were called myths, but they're real, in my opinion, for the most part, they are literal accounts, as literal as possible, of what really went down. Perhaps some meaning lost in translation over time, but by and large, when the Bible said in those days there were giants, or however it said that, in those days there were giants. I took it very literally as a child when I read the Bible on my mother's suggestion. Everybody should read it. Everybody should read all the great literature of the world. And I thought, okay, in those days there were giants, and I had read fairy tales with giants, and giants were ferocious. They surrounded themselves with gold. And if you've looked into the Anunnaki connection, there's that, okay, gold miners from space. They surrounded themselves with gold. They captured human women who were the most attractive, and they kept them in cages, and they ate everything, and they lived in the clouds. They lived up high in a way. And they had kingdoms. In the Bible, they talk about kingdoms where giants dwelled. You didn't go there. Any smart traveler didn't go over there because there's giants over there. What are you, an idiot? Don't go there.
Yeah.
So Smithsonian is digging up giants around 1900, late 1880s, 1900, 1910. They're hiding them because the government says, oh, no, mass panic. This whole mass panic and this notion of national security, this was the beginning of the nanny state in the United States. And I'm sure it came over from Europe and other countries where dictators basically said, our people are not mature enough to handle this, or we think it gives them too much power, or aliens above them are actually saying, no, cannot have that illumination.
I know. And it's like, who are you taking your marching orders off? It's always been my viewpoint that the one preaching about mass panic is the one who is panicking. So the rest of us are not going to have this problem. And
well, consider the plight of the U.S. military after World War II had just bested Hitler and Emperor, my mind's a blank, the Emperor of Japan.
Hydro, I think it was, yeah.
And it was not pleasant. That was not a pleasant time for anybody.
No.
And now UFOs show up with the detonation of nukes, and all of a sudden, everybody, all the military leaders on Earth realize we're not the superior force. They are. And how do we get our citizens to support the notion of a hierarchy, this pyramid hierarchy? David Icke talks about it a lot. A lot of people talk about the Illuminati hierarchy, where in a hierarchy, U.S. military is up at the top with intelligence, military intelligence, trickling down to the people what we need to know, right? What we need to know. This is not need to know. And we're tired of this. We, the people, are tired of this. We, that 20% you talked about, we're tired of this. We know better.
Yeah.
And what's it gonna, maybe the other 80% won't wake up. Maybe those sleepers won't awake, but they seem to be.
That's your problem. In the movie The Matrix, Joe Pantoliano played the part of Lucifer. He was known as Cypher, which is just an abbreviation of Lucifer. Okay. And he's the one that betrays his own people because he tells Mr. Smith, I don't want to remember a damn thing. Erase my mind. I want to live rich. I want to be taken care of. I want to have my ass wiped. I don't want to have to want for anything. I'll be happy to betray the entire race. I don't care about their resistance. I don't care about any of them. I want to live in luxury. And if I have to sell out the human race, that's exactly what I'll do. That was that infamous scene between Cypher, aka the devil, and Mr. Smith.
And as far as I can tell, Lucifer, which translates to to bringer of light or bearer of light.
But yeah, Cypher of light, yep.
Lucifer later morphed into Satan. So Satan is a modern construct. Lucifer is apparently the Hebraic and pre-Hebraic sound of this entity. Lucifer, as far as I can tell, led a mutiny on the spaceship Heaven, where Captain Jehovah was in charge, and they had a difference of opinion about human beings and how they were being bioengineered and what level of consciousness they should have, what they should know and be able to know, and what they should never know. And there was a disagreement, and Lucifer was advocating more knowledge, knowledge of who made humans. And Jehovah saying, no, we can't have that. And Jehovah and his 199 who were on his side committed mutiny, basically, and were cast down to the face of the earth. This is the fallen angel story, and this is a definite sidebar. But my take on it is that, long story short, Lucifer is an alien who had been on the spaceship here to colonize and oversee mining on Earth, who ticked off the commander by having a mutinous group, who were cast away from the main group and condemned to live on prison planet Earth for the rest of their days, which would be shortened because outside of the Earth, the spaceship environment, artificial environment, which imitated their home planet, they would not live thousands of years anymore. They would live only hundreds of years. And with every generation of crossbreeding, especially with humans, that time period reduced and reduced and reduced, so that we have accounts of Medusa, who lived hundreds and hundreds of years. Certain kings of the earth lived hundreds and hundreds of years. Thoth lived hundreds of years. These were more closely, they were more direct descendants of those original fallen angels. That's my take on that, for whatever it's worth.
Yeah. Go
Talking
ahead.
my scarf off here, people.
Is this getting into the Enlil and the Inky?
Enki, yes, Enlil and Enki.
It's another variation off of that. And
And I'm almost sorry I brought it up because it's time to hear from BoJenn and your article. But before we go there, I just want to say, Richard, thanks for sharing part of your book, a whole chapter of your book. Hold it up one more time, please, for the viewers. And say the name again for those on radio. We are being multicast by Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. Go ahead and say.
It's Moor, the Mason, and the Alien, A Call to Action. That's by Richard Smith.
Available on
Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Right.
And
cool.
Thank
so
you.
Run, Don't Walk, get that book, read all about it. And at the end of the show, we'll hear from you again about, I know you've got a special project coming up. You and your wife, the delightful Mrs. Linda Smith, who has been a guest panelist on Taboo Topics with Jean Broida every Sunday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And now let's move on to our final taboo topic for the April 12th, 2020 episode. This is with BoJenn Jennings. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. First of all, I have to show you a picture of me when I was about 60. I'm 67 now. And remember this, because if I get to this point, and I probably won't, this is what I looked like when I had a near-death experience, okay? So keeping that in mind, I probably won't get to it. Also, I have to let you know, I have an anoxic brain disorder. So if I forget something, just know, hey, I'll just move on and just
so that's a word I had to look up. Please tell people who don't know what anoxic means, what that means.
When I had my near-death experience or my death experience, I was deceased for quite a while, possibly more than 30 minutes, possibly throughout a night. And I went without oxygen. So that left me with an anoxic brain. It is an absolute miracle that I am speaking to you. Okay?
Because without oxygen, tissues die.
They die. That's right. I should be in a nursing home somewhere being taken care of, and I'm not. And that is by the grace of the alien nation, I believe. But anyway, so just know that. And as I read, I'm going to read from my own account. I wrote, I don't know if any of you know Ray Hernandez. I was going to be in a book of his. And so this is the beginning bits and pieces that I wrote for him. And I'm going to skip through a lot of it because I'm going to try to get into my death experience because that has to do with aliens. So here we go. Okay. This is my account of supernatural experiences that I've had throughout my life. Okay. I will begin with my birth, October the 9th, 1952, New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. Ocephalus, the constellation, was in the eastern sky that October, and that led me to the now in my life. I was a child of a mechanical engineer who had been in the Air Force during World War II and employed later by Morton Thiokol making missiles, rockets, and ammunition. My mother was a bookkeeper and an accountant. She was also a college graduate. The family was rigidly run, but it was festively lived. From 0 to 5 years of age, we moved 4 to 5 times. By age 6, we settled into a small town in East Texas, and my father built a home there. This is when I started remembering things. I was about 6 or 7 years old. We had many odd experiences, and honestly, I grew up thinking and believing that all people experience these oddities. Of course, I was very naive. Okay, now, all right. In 1960, perhaps, my father gave me a telescope for Christmas, and I was 6 or 7 years old. We lived in the country on a tar road in Longview, Texas. He then worked for Thiokol, as you recall. My father was a navigator in World War II, and navigation in World War II by airplanes were calculated by men. These men were required to know constellations and placement of the galaxies around the world during the night or day, and summer, winter, equinoxes, solstices. Daddy knew the stars and he taught me very well. We stargazed many nights. He pointed out the seven sisters, also known as Pleiades star cluster. He told me Greek mythology behind the groups of heavenly bodies. He quoted the Bible. Can you bind the Pleiades? I listened for hours to peaceful lectures about the stars and his charts he used to determine where a bomber was during World War II. He often fell silent as he spoke. He had shrapnel in his legs after being shot down. Look, Daddy, there's the Big Dipper. And he said, yes, now follow the tail and that will lead you to the Little Dipper. So learn. High hopes for me, but I never achieved those high hopes. Daddy also knew astrology, mythology, and his father was a Methodist minister from Pleasant Grove, Mississippi. Daddy called it Duck Hill. As a child, it was during the Depression, and his father fell ill and died. My father was moved to California to be raised by two old maid aunts who had a little money. They provided him with the finest of education, where he graduated from Georgia Tech. My father always felt betrayed by his family in Mississippi, so he had some resentful moments about that. Here's where we understand that happenstances that we hate are often the things that are good for us in the long run and are intended for the greatest of our possibilities. It was after the war that he became a mechanical engineer. I loved his wisdom, his patience in finding galaxies and telling me his government secrets. Oh, but I was merely 6 or 7, and he could tell me, after all, a child would never remember or have any interest in adult conflict involving top security information, so he thought. I'm sorry, he was at war with the people at Project Blue Book. He told me the men, their names, but I forgot the names. He said they were out to debunk any knowledge or sightings of UFOs. I said, Daddy, are there aliens? He said, it would be foolish and egotistical to believe we were the only ones in the vast universe of ours. Pretty much his exact words. I knew what he meant at that age. I said, Daddy, why do these men want to stop the extraterrestrials? He said, to prevent fear and panic, to let people know they are in charge and no one else. He fell quiet again. He helped me in the 3rd or 4th grade to write a book report about Project Blue Book. I read the report. I remember how excited I was about it. After I gave the report, my teacher said in front of the class, how did you know this? Where did you get this information? Well, my father told me. Right after that, I was sent through a battery of tests to determine if I was retarded or not. Okay. All right, here we go. All right. I'm kind of lost now. Okay. One night around the time of the Project Blue Books, Daddy came home with a stone or piece of iron ore, and it sat in the palm of my 7-year-old hand. The stone seemed just like any other stone. And he said, here, look at this. So I did. He said, now watch this. He took the stone and he started changing its properties. it was no longer a stone, and it became into a long silver black string about 14 inches. He spread it apart with his arms, and he took the stone, and as he unraveled it, it looked just like any other stone without any effort. He then said, "Now you do it." I did the same thing. Daddy, the stone he gave to me, I played with for many years. My daughter, who's 38 now, also remembers the stone. Oops, that fell on my ear. One day the stone disappeared. My father died in 1983, and that was when I never saw the stone ever again. After my mother passed away, I went back to the house to live in her home for a year to try to find that stone. I was never able to do it. I then decided that I would seek after one of his friends, whose name is Bob Sanders. I found out that he was alive at the time. He was suffering from pancreatic cancer. I went to visit him, and I said, I called him on the phone. I said, "Do you remember me?" And he says, "Yeah, I remember well. So what brings you?" His eyes lit up big, and I could tell of his frailness as he's laid there smoking one cigarette after another, just like my daddy. "Well, it was the mid 60s, he said. In my mind, I'm thinking, no, it was in the early 60s or 1959. I clarified with Bob's dates. He said, "No, it was after you moved to Louisiana. You were a teenager then." I said, "Holy cow," I'm thinking to myself. "Bob, are you sure?" "Yes, I'm certain. I know because you were away at school and the government came to your house. They went through the place. I've never seen your father so scared. He doesn't scare easily." "Bob, you can't be right because this happened when I was 7 or 8 or 9. We were living in Longview." He said, Bob began to argue with me. And he says, "No, no." He says, "It was in 1970. I said, it couldn't have been. Anyway, I got ahead of myself. He says, "Your father had a camera and started taking pictures. He took several, and within hours, the photographer and he were flown to Washington, D.C. and debriefed. They were threatened, and so was the other guy. They said, uh, if you talk, we will say that you are lying. We will deny it." And they came, he said, Bob said, "They came to your house and searched the home and Louisiana residence. They went through everything. Your poor father, who was never scared, was speechless to everyone but me. At that point in time, my father stopped talking to me about the incident." Do you know how far have I gone? 10 minutes? Do you know? Does anybody know?
Yeah, you've done about 10 minutes, but
Okay, I'm going to jump into a little bit of where I had my incident. It was February 8th of 2019, okay? In 2018 in the fall, I started a new job, and they said to me, "Everybody here must have the flu vaccine. If you don't take it, then you'll have to wear a mask for 8 hours. Is that going to be a problem?" Well, yes, it will be a problem. That's insane. I have asthma and I cannot wear a mask for 8 hours. And not only that, I have problems whenever I take the flu vaccine. They said, "Well, you can wear an N95, what we have now, during the shift, for an 8-hour shift as a nurse." And I knew that I could not do that. I spent many hours, 24/7 practically at the ER for the years 2013 and 2014 after having a flu shot. I was told then never to get another flu vaccine. I decided then I decided then to take the vaccine. The nurse at the new facility was a state facility. She had a handful of vaccines, maybe 10 or 15. This is a no-no in nursing, as you are to draw each vaccine up in each individual vial. She had a hand of 10 or 15. Each vaccine has an ID number that the nurse is to write down, and then she gives you that paper. That was never done. Okay. And I had immediate reaction to the flu vaccine. Within 2 weeks, both of my eyes dilated. By Christmas, New Year's, and on January 21st, 2019, I resigned. My eyes were still dilated. I was starting to swell. My body was swelling very rapidly. And my asthma medications were stopping. They were stopping working. I can't say that word, sorry. On February the 8th, 2019, that evening, I had worked and I came home, and my asthma medications, I could not get any of them to work for me. My body started swelling hugely that night. And the next day, as chapter 1 begins, my son writes on Facebook, "Today, my dearest mother, Bonnie Jennings, was taken from us and given back to us. What began as a severe chest congestion last night ended up with respiratory arrest this morning." Notice that he said the 9th of February, and the last thing that I remember was February the 8th. So there was quite a bit of time that had slipped by. Now I'm going to slip to chapter 6 of my report, and this is
I don't often interrupt when somebody's giving their article, but do you attribute your symptoms to the flu vaccine?
Yes.
Okay,
I do.
Please continue.
Okay. Chapter 6, the hard chapter to explain. Every chapter begins with suddenly. Suddenly, I'm in a room and that I now call an office. I am now deceased, okay? And so I am 5 chapters I'm leaving out. So just know now I'm in space, and I'm walking into a spaceship, okay? All right. Suddenly, I'm in a room that I now call an office. It was dark, and there was an illuminated, long, sleek desk. Sitting casually and comfortably behind the desk were 5, I think that's the number, extraterrestrials. I was calm and unafraid. They were kind, reserved, yet warmly inviting, and patiently pleasant. I felt that I was being interrogated, but they weren't mean or hateful or Luciferian. I knew they knew me from the past. I asked the question, "Are you our human DNA?" And without hesitation, they said, "Yes, we are." I wasn't surprised and felt comfortable with the answer. I knew that I wasn't being given any truths, and the answer sat inside my being was the truth. These were my relatives, and I was home. The personalities of these alien ETs is unlike humanity. We humans are mammals, and they are not. The mammals are warm and friendly to their beings. They are warm and friendly, and I am so sorry. There we go. Somehow or another, some of the typing got left out. Okay. I have to back up. All right. So they're warm and friendly, and we are not. And that gets into our DNA system, the Neanderthal versus the alien. We are certain about Neanderthal and certain about some other being. I associate that with alien. So depending on how much that structure is, has to do with the loving part. And as I looked at these aliens, okay, they aren't huggy, feely, touchy. They are stand back. You speak telepathically to them. Everything is understood. And it's hard to explain, but I'm going to stop reading here and just start explaining it to you. Oh, I wanted to show you this page. This is my judgment, okay? This is what I'm in. I drew this picture.
Hold it up to your camera just a little more and hold it still. Hold it quite still so it'll focus. Okay, now we can see my judgment, my interview.
Yes,
Something.
2019.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
you're welcome. So I am being interviewed by them, and they want to know about binary code. And you just said about your 111, and I was thinking, okay, they handed me these sheets and they said, read this, and it was binary code. And I'm saying, I don't read binary code. And they said, they didn't say, yes, you do. They just sat there and said, we'll wait here forever. You'll either read the code or, and so I guess I don't remember, but I was released to go into the next room, which there were some other alien beings sitting there, and they had star charts, and they asked me to read the star charts, and I did. The galaxies and where we were at. We were at Orion's belt, and from Orion's belt, I had to tell them where I was and different things about it. And they handed me, instead of the binary code was on paper like this. And I thought it was unusual because after I did whatever I did with the binary code, they took it and threw it on the floor in the spacecraft and they burned it. Okay. And that's kind of what I mean. They're not, they don't care how I might have felt about that, or I might have frightened. That's not a concern of theirs. And so, anyway, as soon as I looked at the star charts, I was released to go out of the back of the spacecraft, and I left to explore the rest of the universe, and I went alone. I kept saying to them, why am I alone? And they kept saying to me, well, you have eternity. And it later occurred to me that eternity there means absolutely nothing, because there's no time off the face of the earth, which led me to where the biblical description of heaven came, and eternity and eternal. These are words with time elements. And so, so in an afterlife situation, there is no time. So those words don't apply. You see what I mean? But they were saying,
and I've heard, well, I read in a book called The Alien Interview that the big problem with being an eternal being when you're not in a body is boredom. And that after a certain amount of time, you have an option. You can incarnate. You can incarnate on an exciting prison planet like Earth and suffer and feel joy and have orgasms and starve and have wars and have peace and drive cars and and apparently we signed soul agreements to do that. Many of us signed soul agreements, if not all of us, to do that.
Right.
I mean, when you get into reincarnation, it gets deep, but this is about you, BoJenn.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I love hearing it, your ideas, because the afterlife is it more real than here? People say that. It's real. That's all I can tell you. It's just, it's another place. It's a parallel universe. It's you think something and you're there. I mean, there is no travel. There is no time. And so they were using those words. You have eternity to see your family, or to see your animals, or to see whatever you need to see. You have eternity. So they were using my own words or my own intellect to challenge me. They were trying to stretch my thinking. And it wasn't until way after the experience, maybe 6 months, that I thought, up there is no such thing as eternity. So
time. No such thing as time?
Yeah, I mean, it's time. Yeah, there is no such thing. So,
well, time takes on a different meaning for sure, because of course, time as we know it on Earth is relative to Earth as we know it. So we measure time by the orbit of our planet around the sun, right? That's 1 year. And in other planetary systems, a year is of a different length. And these Anunnaki, who allegedly came to Earth to mine gold, have a rotational cycle of like 3,000 of our years. One of their days is like it's very different from ours. So
Wow.
I get it.
Yeah.
Intellectually at least, but you experienced it, and that's quite different. How did this impact you emotionally?
I think emotionally, I think I've strengthened me. I feel like I'm a new person. I mean, I saw the things that I believed in. And when I saw them, I knew that the way I was headed was right. I often wondered, why did you allow me to see this? I mean, what is it that you want me to do? I think it's very strange that we're here on Easter weekend discussing together this. And I know this is very upsetting to a lot of people who have a Christian faith, and but I don't take anything away from who Jesus Christ was. Or at one point in my afterlife, I thought I saw him, but my take on him wouldn't be like biblical. It would be extraterrestrial. Where did he arrive from? What is his planetary source? And I know that would sound crazy to a lot of people, but that's the way I believe. And so I don't know if you believe that way, or I'd like to hear, your.
Well, I believe Jesus Christ was definitely an ascended master. I'm not. Let's let Richard answer this.
Okay.
He has been quiet too long. Miss you, buddy.
Sorry, I've just been listening to you guys here, and it's BoJenn, that was fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'll get back to Jean's question in a minute, but before I forget it, I just wanted to ask you, BoJenn, you had difficulty with the binary code, but in the next room, did you have an easier time or feel more comfortable with the star charts?
Easy.
That was easier? Okay. Because it almost seems like the two tests, one would be an affinity for being an engineer and the other for a navigator. And they were probably seeing which one you had an affinity for. And then you walk out the back of the spaceship and they're like, oh, she knows where she's going. She's okay. And then you go explore the universe. All right.
Exactly.
So I find that those were two opposing tests at opposite ends of the spectrum. One, the minutia of programming something versus the external universe and the star charts. So it sounds to me like they were kind of testing you there to see which way you were going to go, giving you two paths. So
yes, and I felt interrogated. I honestly did. At first, I was frightened me a little bit, but they were kind of not giggling, but kind of smiling between each other. But I felt that it was some kind of test. And did it have something to do with my father? Because my father, when I read the part about I didn't achieve what he wanted me to, he wanted me to go into the engineering area. I mean, he and I did not become that, and so that was a disappointment. But anyway.
And in the Betty and Barney Hill story, Betty Hill said she remained conscious throughout her abduction while her husband was in another examining room freaking out. And she chatted up the leader after her exam was done. And he showed her a star chart that appeared in the air and said, so here's where we are and blah, 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 blah. Any questions? She's like, no. So you know where Earth is relative to where we live, right? And she said, oh, no, I don't know anything about astronomy. And according to her under hypnosis, they seemed disappointed, which made me wonder if they have emotions. And didn't you just say they have emotions?
But not really.
Okay.
I mean, they kind of gave a little smile between each other. I'm a pretty good reader of people.
Well, a smile is an emotional response unless it's some physical tick.
It is. It is. If they have emotions, it was very flat.
Like poker faces?
Oh, yeah, very much.
Well, back to Richard. You had more to say.
Their fault, they tend to carry a systematic approach to bloodlines. So if your mother or father was doing something, they tend to look at you as, well, why can't you do it too? It's part of your bloodline. And this is where that smirk comes from. It's like, well, her father could do this, or her father wanted her to do this. Why can't she do it? Why can't she read the binary code? I don't get it. What's wrong here? So, and that becomes a bit of a mystery to them. They can't comprehend that, because for them, it's a case of things being directly passed down genetically, whereas for us, it's more experiential. We experience the world. We don't absorb it from a genetic code or a computer code like they do. So there's a bit of a difference there, and they see our bloodlines as a direct binary code, a genetic computer program. Well, if your parents had it, then you should have inherited it. Why didn't you inherit this ability? Why can't you read the binary code? You know, and
Are you saying that in their experience, knowledge is inherited? Knowledge is passed genetically? The way in animals, instinct seems to be passed.
There's a lot of it that's passed down genetically. And some of them still like the experience, because they get to a point where they ask themselves, is this all there is? And this is when you have these civilizations that start jumping into a spacecraft or a mothership and start exploring the universe. But many of them who do these explorations to other solar systems for benevolent or malevolent reasons, they still have that inherent mentality of like, well, this is simple math. Why can't you read this? It was passed on to me genetically. Why wasn't it passed on to you? I was programmed with it from the day I was born. As soon as I jumped out of whatever womb, sac, or egg I was born from, how come that didn't happen for your species? How come your infants are so damn helpless for the first so many years of their lives? You know, how come they don't pop out with instant knowledge like we do? You know, it's a mystery to them. A lot of them have a hard time comprehending this thing called reincarnation and the psychological factors. For them, psychology is not something that they're in tune with, because that's in tune with our emotions, our experiences. This is alien to them. What's human psyche? What the hell is this? What do we do with that? You know? So this is the thing that they're constantly trying to learn about us. So you get these crash course interviews or interrogations where they throw up these flashcards in front of you and they're like, what is it? I don't know. Is it a Rorschach test? What is it? I don't know. What am I supposed to see? What am I supposed to do with this? This is not the way I learn. So, and that doesn't compute for them. So there's a cultural clash there. That's what it comes down to. It's a cultural clash.
Right, right. I didn't get to the part of, actually, I left out two parts. And when I was a child, I too had my experiences. That's for another day. And and that came from my father, and those were very unfriendly beings that I met up with that were, I guess, working with them. I was in their way and in their path, and they were very, very unfriendly. I was regressed for that time. And I thought it was funny when you were saying that the hypnotist had a problem. She was dumbfounded with you for about 10 minutes. Well, with me, when I was regressed, I immediately saw, hey, don't come. Little gray guy out front, little gray alien. You go away. You're not welcome. You weren't welcome then. This is not your deal. Go on. And so I went. And so anyway, but I left that out. I'm so sorry, because that was important. But
well, there's just so much to all of these
there
stories. We can't. We've already burned through 2 hours here.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh yeah. And
wow.
I hate to say it, but let's Any final thoughts, Richard, about BoJenn's accounting here?
Yeah, the rock thing, that was amazing. What you were describing, was that your father that showed that to you? Is that what you were describing? Okay. And this thing that looked like a rock, you said it somehow or other, if you knew how to unfold it, it just opened up like a silver strip.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, that's all it did. You just scrunch it up and you could never tell that it was a silver black string.
Did he ever happen to mention where it came from?
Well, I was a kid.
Because that sounds similar to what they were picking up at Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a damaged piece of technology or craft that got crippled, but still was able to retain some of its characteristics when you could unfold it out a certain way. But it was probably so damaged and crippled that it ended up folding back up on itself. And that's phenomenal because, it makes me think, living organic metal of some kind, something that can camouflage itself.
Yeah, well, they say these craft, by which I mean insiders who profess to have worked on these crafts. So U.S. engineers who whistleblow say that the craft is organic and living, and it has consciousness, and that the pilots and occupants integrate with the ship and combine their consciousnesses to travel through space-time.
Yes.
And that is why initial attempts by the U.S. military to pilot these craft failed, because the consciousness component was not well understood.
Wow.
Yes, and that goes back to the whole learning, interviews, and interrogations of why can't you do this? For them, the hive mentality of the collective consciousness for the basic fundamental elements is a pilot, a co-pilot, and a navigator, a triad consciousness or hive mentality, whatever you want to call it. For you to get 3 human beings to do that without discovering our deepest and darkest secrets and being exposed, that's a problem. Okay. We lie to each other for a good reason. We lie to each other for a bad reason. Some of those lies are little white lies. Some of them are horrendous big lies, like there's no such thing as aliens. Okay. And for us to suddenly jump into a spacecraft and be like, okay, we're all going to know what each other's about. I'm going to learn some really wild things about you to fly this ship. Yeah, not going to work. Okay, not going to work. Because all of a sudden you find out the guy next to you killed his wife, or the woman sitting next to you has been molesting children. So, how does that fly? Not so good.
Well, I'll just end with this one little thing. As I was on my journey in space, I ended up by myself on the outer perimeter of all the universes, not just one. I was on the perimeter, and I'm looking up at the sewed seam of the Fibonacci code of these plant life that were alive and speaking, and the plant life was sewing up the universes, and which one of those pictures over there that I drew showed that. And we are nestled in a whole like little baby bundle, because should we leave the baby bundle, we will not make it. And they said to me, we do not go with you when you leave beyond.
What is a baby bundle? I'm not getting that.
Okay. When you see a baby and the baby's all bundled up in the swaddling clothes, okay, bundled up tightly. Well, we are tightly bundled. There's a tight bundle around us. There's a little seam.
So we're swaddled.
Yes.
We're constrained physically and mentally and psychologically and emotionally.
But what they said to me is, if you go beyond the bundle, we don't go with you, because no humans who've ever gone out there have ever returned. So that told me humans have been out there and they don't come back.
Maybe they don't want to come back.
Maybe, maybe. I don't know.
Well,
I
this
just
is the
thought it was-
point in the show where I say, and I'm very reluctant to say it right now because I definitely want to have both of you back
Oh, that'd be
because we
fun.
have just scraped the very tip of some very deep icebergs, I suspect here. I am so happy to have had both BoJenn Jennings and Richard Smith as my guest panelists on the April 12th, 2020. I guess it is Easter edition of, well, I'm a pagan. What's it to me? You stole my holiday, which is Equinox, which has already been. So in any event, now I'm not going to rant about religion. Thank you both for being my guest panelists. I couldn't do a show like this without you, and you have brought so much to think about. This is the time of the show where we shout out our accomplishments. We say hi to Mom, and we talk about our books and our projects. So please let us commence with Richard Smith. Just a recap, if you please. And how
Sure.
people can contact you if you want them to contact you.
Oh, okay, sure. No, you can always reach Linda and I at ufoteacher.com. That's our official website. And also our conference site, humanoriginsconference.com. There's a link on there for the books, but you can actually get both books
Yeah, hold
at
them still so that they focus up. And by the way, Linda Smith is also known as Mrs. Smith.
Mrs. Smith.
She's
Yes.
been on my show. She's awesome. Hi. I think she's here in the background too.
And yes, and then of course that Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and on top of that, starting tomorrow and weekly on Sundays, or I should say weekly on Sundays, period. Linda and I are starting a new radio show, The Return of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So, and it'll be on GERN, Global Enlightenment Radio Network. Okay.
.com.
.com. Yeah, that's the website. If you want to tune in live, globalenlightenmentradionetwork.com. Feel free to check it out. At ufoteacher.com, there is a direct radio link at the top of the website for the show as well. So we hope to see you there.
Thank you so much, Richard Smith, for being here with us on Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. BoJenn Jennings, shout it out.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. It's a pleasure meeting both of you. As for myself, I wrote a spiritual book, and it's called Cat Dubois' Odyssey to Enchantment. I wrote it before my incident. I started writing it in 2009. It's literary. It is probably some of my beliefs now. It's still worth reading. It's a lot where a lot of you are, and that's fine. And still a part of me is there. It's a great book. Anyway, you can reach me at reach me at Facebook, BoJenn Jennings. BoJenn Jennings. My email is bonniegJennings@gmail.com, and you can reach me that way too.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I am your host, Jean Broida. You can email me, and please do, especially if you'd like to be a guest panelist on the show. I welcome your comments, concerns, and criticisms and questions. Jean, Jean, at lightwork111.com. The show is live streamed to my YouTube channel Sundays 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States. The YouTube channel is Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, Broida. You can also get there from my website, which is under construction, tabootopics.life/shows, multicast on Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. Let's see what else. I write for the dailyconspiracy.com as Lightworker111, and I invite you to read me there if you like what you hear here. Head over to Amazon if you'd like to check out my book, Unknown Objects, the Top 10 U.S. UFO Cases. I enjoyed writing that, and it's meant to be an introduction to people who would just like an overview of what's going on with UFOs in the United States. It's so last century. goes through the end of World War II to 1997. And basically, that's our take on it. This Easter, April 12th, 2020. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening up to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. And we will see you next week. Over and out.
But one day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.